What's up, everybody? Donegan McCuaig here, broker, realestateLA.com, social media at Quixotic Realty, and I wanted to make a video about event spaces in the city of Los Angeles because I feel like half of the people that call me are looking to open an event space. So that's a popular business model right now. You know, a lot of people will lease a space and then they'll sublease it on peerspace.com, like for a daily or a weekly amount, and that sort of thing. And I've been getting that type for years for photography and filming sort of thing, but now more than ever, people want to do events. So to begin with, most landlords don't like what I call them as peer-space tenants, because there's a lot of people randomly coming in and out of the buildings. So most of these buildings are generally used for office space, so creative office space. And I seem to get people that contact me and they think creative space means that you can do whatever you want in the space, and that is just simply not the case. So the landlords don't like peer space tenants because random people come in and out of the building. I mean, one time I was working in my office and there was a peer space space next to me, and all of a sudden I heard like a band practicing, and I'm like, what the hell? And so, like, even if you have good intentions, like sometimes people even lie about, you know, what they plan to use your peer space for. So you know, landlords, ideally they would prefer office tenants, but obviously with the economy and the pandemic and how that changed everything has made a huge difference in the demand for commercial space right now. And so now more than ever, you know, people are looking for creative uses. But the main thing to know is that commercial space is permitted. And so all commercial space should have a use permit, essentially, which basically states, you know, historically, it's like, you know, most spaces have office buildings or creative office buildings, or these warehouse buildings that have been converted to creative office spaces. Same thing. You know, they're permitted for office use. Do people use them for different things other than that? Yes. But the word to remember here is liability, right? So office users are low liability. They come in, they work on their computers, and they go home at 5, and that's it, you know? So people who want to use creative space, you know, they want 24/7 access, which is cool. You know, like, anyone needs, you know, flexibility with their schedule in order to do what they want creatively and serve their clients. So, but yeah, so yeah, the difference between office tenants and creative tenants is huge, right? So I basically specialize in creative tenants. So, and by creative, I mean fashion, design, photography. I do a ton of fashion, artists, you name it, and, you know, pretty much anything could be creative depending on how flexible you want to use the phrase. But the main thing I want to drive home is two things. One, it's an issue of liability, right? Two is an issue of legality in terms of the use of the space, and and you simply can't do whatever the hell you want in a space once you get it. So some people don't seem to understand that, which, you know, is really unintuitive to me. So, but, you know, it happens so often that, you know, I just had to make a note of it and just, you know, just get it. But no, you cannot do whatever you want to in a space. It's not like you're in a single family house where you own it, you know, and you know, can do whatever you want. There's common areas. It's a dense building. There's, you know, in these high rises or whatever, or 12 stories and below. So you cannot do whatever you want in a commercial space. These spaces were typically designed for creative office or if they're ground floor, they're typically designed for retail, right? So people call me all the time looking for event space. So back to that. So, it's one thing if it's for your fashion company and you're having an event to showcase your new line of clothing, or it's something specifically related to your business, that you want to get people together in what I like to call professional gatherings, because, it's a semantic issue with, what is an event? If you want to use it as really flexible, this is an event right now, as me speaking to you. So, yeah. So the biggest thing with regard to events is alcohol, right? So, which is also related to liability. So, you need to have a CUP to serve liquor in the space, typically. No, always, unless, there's a few exceptions. But in order to get a CUP, which is a conditional use permit for alcohol, that process can take about a year in the city of LA. So once you sign the lease, so once you finally open with, a bar or whatever, just to have that conditional use permit, if it didn't already exist there beforehand, is gonna take you a year to get. And a lot of things with the city of LA are like that. The city of Los Angeles is very heavily regulated, over-regulated, and very, very slow. And I, basically can't imagine it being worse, actually. So, so when people call me and they see this cool space online, and they're like, oh, Donegan, I want to start an event business. That space is awesome. I'd like to have people there, and I like to have events, and right. So you can't just do that. So you have to have a use and go through a permit process, and again, liability. So the reason there's permits is for safety purposes, to make sure that the general public is safe using a space. And the city is all about liability as well. So part of the reason why I think everything takes so long is that no one wants to sign off on anything, because by signing off on it, they're sort of acknowledging that they approve the use of the space and the safety, right? So the city of Los Angeles gets sued constantly. So if something were to happen, if someone were to get injured, and there's multiple ways to look at it. So let's say somebody gets shot and there's a party and there's alcohol. So they're gonna go after you, they're gonna go after the landlord, and they might even go after the city, because the city, failed to allow, failed to inspect and have a permit and all that sort of thing. So so if you want to hold events in a space, I'm sorry this is so scrambled, and I'm making this video because this is a lot to tell anyone, you know what I mean, if they call me and they're like so anyway, so in order to use a space, the best way to do it would be to get a banquet hall permit, because the city does not have on file as a use with the Department of City Planning as event space. The closest thing they have is banquet hall. And and then there's the occupancy limit. So, if you have a bunch of people inside a unit, there's fire safety precautions, right? And so the occupancy of a space is also determined by the fixtures that you have in there. So there's all these regulations basically for safety purposes and CYA on part of the city of LA to to make it difficult for you to do business, basically. But it's also good, obviously, right? You don't want unsafe buildings. But you know, just the time it takes to do what you want to do as a small business owner, from a blank shell to whatever you actually want to use it for. Like, the fact that it takes a year is just ridiculous. You know, I mean, China, they built a hospital in like 2 months or something. So someone will come out during the inspection process and say, oh, you got to fix this. And it might take like, you know, a day to fix, but they were like, oh, I'll be back in 30 days, you know? And it's just obnoxious of a process. So, you cannot do whatever you want to in a space because of these things, right? So if you're looking at an office space or a ground floor space and you want to use it for events, like straight up birthday parties, weddings, that sort of thing, you should have, you know, all the appropriate sinks for CUP and to be serving liquor or food, hand sink, mop sink, dishwashing sink, food prep sink. What am I missing? So all the sinks, and you know, you have to provide a floor plan to the city and that sort of thing. So the easiest way to run an event business is to find a space that's already has a banquet hall permit, or a space that already has, and a CUP. So there's two separate things. You could have a banquet hall permit, but you might not have a conditional use permit for liquor. And then of course, you have to also have a liquor license, which can cost like 80 grand. It varies depending on whatever the market is. So that is another thing. And then there's a beer and wine license, which is separate from that. So, you know, it seems like pretty obvious that, hey, this is an empty space, it's cool, a lot of people could fit in here, we can have some music and serve some drinks and party and make good money off it, right? No, because there's a lot of liability associated with that, and there is a process that is very time consuming and lengthy. And any serious business owner that is looking to have an event space will do these things by the book because of the liability associated with it. You'll go through the process. And the other thing is a lot of landlords, you know, they don't want to give you a year free while you're trying to get permits, right? So that's the other thing. You know, if you're not successful in doing what you want to do as a business owner, and one of the spaces that I'm representing, I'm not successful, because what ends up happening is that the landlord looks at me and says, Donegan, you brought me this tenant, they had all these parties, the police got involved. I had one landlord that, he actually got criminal charges because we rented to this lady who said she was a photographer, and then it ended up having sex parties and all this, and then people under the age of 21 drinking and you know. So, you know, I even had another space recently where they told us it was going to be an arcade business, and it ended up being an illegal gambling casino. So, and the police got involved, and apparently a whole bunch of people were arrested, and it's just a mess. So, you know, when you call me and you're looking for space, tell me exactly what you want to use the space for, and I'll do my best to assist you with what you would need to do that. But if you want to have an event space, you're going to need to get a banquet hall permit, or maybe take over an existing restaurant, or there's another option of getting a catering license as well. So it's important that you let the landlord know and the broker know what you want to use the space for, because, you know, what I strive for is transparency. You know, I don't want anyone to get in a situation where it's totally not what they expected, right? Because, you know, if you get in there and you're not able to do what you want to do, not only is it bad for you, it's bad for the landlord, and it's bad for me, because you know, landlords will trust me to bring them good tenants that are gonna pay the rent on time and not cause any problems. So, and at the same time, oftentimes I represent both the tenant and the landlord. So if they don't already have an agent. So by default, I'm representing the tenant as well. So it's important to me that you get a fair deal and that you're able to do what you want to do. But now more than ever, it's people just seem to have no concept that you can't do whatever you want once you just rent a space. There's designations for things, so use permits. So you going in there and having a party or making an event space or renting it to people for birthday parties or record release parties or whatever, it sounds cool, but there's a lot of liability and red tape associated with it, and you can't just straight up do that. And you certainly shouldn't. You certainly should be very transparent about how you want to use the space. And my job is to at least point you in the right direction if I don't have any space that could serve that particular need. So I know this was very jumbled, but can you imagine me having saying all this information to 10 people a day? I mean, typically 10 or 15 people call me a day, potential tenants. And it's just a long spiel. So hopefully this video was informative and you are more familiar with the process of leasing commercial real estate in Los Angeles, and that if you do want to have an event space, I always recommend to both restaurant tenants and event tenants that you get a consultant, an entitlements consultant that's specialized and that will hold your hand through the process. So to get a CUP, you have to go through Downtown Neighborhood Council. There's a lot of governing bodies even that you have to get the approval from in order to acquire the permits that you need in order to do what you want to do as an event space tenant. And a lot of times, even if you do things by the book, landlords don't even want an event space tenant because it's basically for whatever reason, especially if it's upstairs in an office building, right? So hopefully this was informative and gives you a better idea. Have an awesome day. And if you're looking for commercial real estate in Los Angeles, my name is Donegan McCuaig. You can check out my website, realestateLA.com. Search by your monthly budget, square footage. If you're looking for retail, just select the option ground floor, and everything I have will pop up. Just shoot me a text message. I can coordinate a tour, and hope you have an awesome rest of your day. Bye-bye.